I want to welcome everyone to the NABGA panel. We have some amazing guests. This is a panel on the dilemma of depicting racial trauma as part of the modern Black experience in media. And we're looking at how to take charge of the narrative and amplify our voices to get the stories right. I am joined by an extraordinary panel of people who are from many different walks of life. We have Delano Massey. He is our new and first head of the CNN Race and Equality Beat. We also have the Isaiah Thomas. And in case you don't know that name, because there are two of them, he has had an incredible career, NBA Hall of Famer, an executive. He is an analyst on NBA TV. And if you ever need to figure out which one is which, it's Isaiah Lord Thomas for all of us. We are also joined by the incomparable director, Raoul Peck. He has just put a film out, a new documentary. It is extraordinary, called Exterminate All the Brutes, and it looks at like 600 years of history. I do not know how he packed all of that into a series. He also did I Am Not Your Negro, which was acclaimed and was just amazing. If you haven't seen either of those yet, please do go and watch those films. They're extraordinary. And we are joined by Sally Richardson Whitfield. She is an actress. She is a director. She has done so many films. I was going to try to list them all, but it is nearly impossible. She's been in this game a long time, knows her business, is an incredible actress and director. So we have this panel with us, and we are so lucky to bring them together today for you. I am going to start with maybe one of the simplest questions. And I know this is about, sort of how we depict racial trauma, but I think what I want to start with is something that is more general, because we need to ask the question, are Black folks and the issues and the intricacies of life as a Black American or a Black person in this world being depicted correctly or differently now? I'm going to start with Raoul, because he is the furthest away in the Dominican Republic right now. Raoul, you have this incredible film that is now out, this incredible documentary. Tell me a little bit about what you see in the world of media today when depicting Black voices.
Well, we come from a long history of being not seen on the screen or on TV or even in history books. So our situation is quite different than, I would say, the mainstream audience. So we have to fight, and at least as filmmakers, we have to fight every day to make sure that we can not only deconstruct these thick layers of stories about us, without we could even say critique any of it. And then at the same time, we have to deal with our present and create a new narrative. So it's like we have several layers to, and I'm not even speaking about the fact that we have to open doors in the industry. We basically had to butt our heads into the industry so that we could have the resources and even they could acknowledge that we exist. So, and that's why this particular discussion about Black trauma, we should make sure that, why are we discussing this and in what context? It's hard to mix films that are obviously made for entertainment and reality. I dealt with reality, with history, with real trauma. So there are things I cannot hide. So the question is really always, what is the context? Who are we making it for? And who are financing it? And in what context the film had been made, or the book, or the podcast?
Raoul, I'm gonna ask Sally about this. You've been on both sides of the camera. How hard has it been for you to choose and decide? I mean, we got to work. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Hollywood has, over the years, more and more people now of color have come into the fold. But you've been doing this a long time, and I'm sure things have changed. What have you seen, and what do you want to see in this industry when it comes to covering and showing Black people as they are?
Well, part of my reality is that I will come on a lot of shows, and I'm a guest director, or now on HBO doing The Gilded Age, being a producer there. I find myself being the only Black voice that's there, and and that's a big responsibility for me. And but So I take that responsibility on to make sure those characters are given a sense of dignity. Right now, the show I'm doing is set in the 1800s. So obviously, there's some things that there's some racial problems that are going on in the 1800s, and there's a different way I have to deal with those characters. But so even though in that society, they couldn't walk, the people during the time maybe couldn't walk down the street in a different way. But how do we still find a way to give those characters dignity and respect, even though we have to acknowledge the time, within the time period that we're directing it? And my job coming on a show is really to show them what a Black woman can do in this space. I know that I am judged by every failure that the women and the Black women before me, if they did one thing wrong, then they've decided that's how Black women are. That's how Black women direct. So it's a big responsibility when I'm on any show to do my best and to kill it, because I know everyone who comes after me is going to be judged that way.
It's a lot of pressure. I think I hear what you're saying.
It is.
It's a lot of pressure, and you feel like you are representing an entire race of people, which is a bit unfair.
Yeah, and I encourage them, I think that we found on some of the shows, I encouraged them to bring other Black voices in. I said, because even though I'm here and I can say, hey, that's not authentic, that's offensive, other Black people have different sensibilities. You got to have more than one in the room. I'm not gonna catch everything that is wrong, and you got to have a few of us there to get a real overview. So just because you have me, I can't answer every problem.
Isaiah, you are an icon. You are someone that people have looked up to for years, decades even. What is your experience when it comes to what is happening now as a person who is front and center, especially in the world of basketball? There have been so many things that have happened where sports has intersected with politics. And I know people say like, oh, let's keep politics. It's in everything. Politics and sports have been going hand in hand for a very long time, lest people forget, at the Olympics. So tell me a little bit about what is that like and what role that you think sports plays in all of this.
I think sports plays a critical and important role here in America in terms of the system that we are governed under. And what sports in entertainment, arts, theater has allowed us to do internationally is introduce our culture, our people to the international form and the international space. And the language of sport is what I've been very critical of, the racialized language of sport and the dehumanizing language that comes in the lane of sport. And it's talked about so freely that we just take it for granted. But inside the sporting field, when you talk about under contract, being drafted, a restricted free agent, then you become free. The language of sport is very dehumanizing, very racialized. And then the business model that we operate under in sport is truly a plantation business model with the same language, the same racialized language. I was never called a thug before in my life until I got to the NBA and someone was describing the way I played. And so when you talk about politics, the Detroit Pistons, the bad boys, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, because our team was so out front in terms of talking about these racialized words that were being used around us. His first visit was to Detroit in 1990 after we had won the championship. And I'll never forget just sitting there talking with him and he explaining, the apartheid system, the colorized apartheid system. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that's America. We are in a color apartheid system. When you talk about black, white, red, yellow, people of color, and how we operate and move in this system, with this language that's surrounding us in sports and entertainment, I think it's critical that we understand the concepts, we understand the language that we're using, and we get away from this dehumanizing, racialized language and start, uplifting our people and uplifting our language.
I'm going to follow up with that just because I know that you're also a commentator. Do you find yourself doing that as an example, or are you pushing other people to say, "Hey, man, let's change this"? Because
I push other people to change it, and we've actually slipped back. A big part of my controversy in Detroit and why the Pistons were so controversial is because we were attacking this racialized language. And I made the comment, I think in 86 or 87, that I did not want to be judged or perceived by the gaze of the white male only. And if you remember back then in sport, 99% of the coverage was by white males. There were no females, there were no brothers, there were no sisters. So you were only getting the perception of the white male in his white editor in terms of how he perceived you or thought of you. So the language that I was attacking and critiquing was, again, the dehumanizing language, comparing us to animals and only judging us from the neck down, but not giving us the understanding and the believability that we could think, play quarterback, and be a point guard. And at that time, I was questioning why I was labeled unpure or impure, but the other white point guards, they were called pure point guards. But I wasn't pure. And so the whole language around sport. And so today I remind all our people that I work with, we have to get away from describing each other as animalistic terms. I've talked to, some of the top people in the industry, and when they describe our play, they'll say, well, that guy's a beast, or he's an animal. And I'm like, hey, we all went to school. We can find better words and description to describe what it is that we're seeing other than using these animalistic terms of description.
Wonderful. Thank you, Isaiah Delano. You work in reality. I don't want to say reality TV, but you work in reality, and you and I have worked together on so many different things, from protest politics and beyond. What is it how difficult is it for you seeing all these traumatic events, because that's what news tends to cover more than anything else, and making sure that the stories are intricate, that they're not so stereotypical? How difficult has that been for you to kind of break that mold?
I think it's a challenge every day, depending on what the story is and where we are in terms of coverage. This isn't necessarily a new fight for me. This is just my current one. But as I got into journalism, that's just pretty much the way that it is. And I think that a lot of times, especially as a manager, I'm usually one of the few voices from people who look like me. And that was something early in my career that I didn't necessarily want to take on, because I didn't want to be the barometer for all Black people. But I had some really good mentors, and one of them actually just broke it down to me and said that if you are that person in the room, then you absolutely are that barometer. You're at least that first level or that first line of defense. and you try to do what you can to keep everyone honest. And that is something that I learned very early on as a young cops reporter, and just working in East St. Louis. So, you fast forward to where I am today, and it's, I appreciate the opportunity that I have to be able to speak at CNN and to have people who are listening to me, executives who are listening. That doesn't necessarily erase the challenge, because it's still there, because not all of your peers have the same lived experience. And at least for myself, I do draw a lot on the experience that I had, growing up, and my experience as a journalist. And I bring that to the table when I'm sitting there. And I think that that's one of the things that is probably not really going to stop, because one way that you would actually mitigate some of that is by having more inclusive newsrooms, right? And having more collective voices, people who are actually sharing their lived experiences as well. And I think that having a diversity of voices and experiences, that's actually what helps you to keep any news organization honest, because everybody has a unique and different perspective. So to me, it's just it's tiring to answer your question. I think that it's a tiring thing, but it's one that I'm committed to, because this, to me, it's not just I don't do journalism as a sport. I don't cover it just because we're trying to capture these things. To me, it's much more important than that. This is also about preserving the historic record and making sure that it accurately reflects things, and to make sure that those who don't have a voice, that their voices are actually heard.
And I know that it can be a fight, a battle when it's not front page news and there's not, protests in the streets. Sally, let me ask you about what you see. Are we, when you're looking at the industry, have things gotten better? I mean, or is it still really, really, really hard as a Black woman in this industry to gain people's respect, to get those jobs, to get them to green light a project? What is that like now?
Well, I think it's both things. Like we're in a wave right now, which we go through a lot, and right now it's great. I mean, not as great as it could be, but right now things are pretty good. As a Black female director doing TV, I can't stop working, because right now there's an initiative to bring our voices in. I'm hoping that continues. I think that things have gotten better because we have more producers writing and creating, because at the end of the day, I think it's the power of the pen to tell our stories the right way and from our perspective. For so many years, it's only been white writers telling us our stories. As an actress, I remember how many times I would give a reading and I'd get notes from producers about, yeah, you sound a little angry. You have a little edge to you. And I'm like, I don't know, that's how I talk. That's just, and like you said, so there's nobody else there going. I have white people telling me how I interact with another friend. And I'm like, this is how we talk. This is how we communicate. Nobody's angry. And so now on the other side of it, because we can write our own stories, we can now be more authentically ourselves. My hope is with more creators and more people writing and getting these huge deals, we can continue to write our own stories. And that's the only way we're going to continue our longevity in this, is to have our own stories done.
Raul, this new project that you have put out into the world is extraordinary. Did you have pushback on this? I mean, how hard was it? Because describe a little bit about your new project and what it's about, and whether it was difficult to get that out there, because it is different than probably anything I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, after the success of I Am Not Your Negro, in the US and outside as well, I travel a lot. And one thing that bothered me in some discussions is that people wanted to see what was going on in America as, look at the bad American, look at what they are doing to the Black people. And then they would push like a denial that the history of segregation started in Europe. And it's one story. And so I had to go back to the whole story. When did it start? When did white supremacy started? When did they started to denigrate and to hierarchize people, human beings, saying your race is better? Even the idea of race, when did it start? Because every single of this terminology have an origin. And we need to know that story. Otherwise, we are fighting like blind people in a dark room. So it was important for me to take on, although it was difficult, to take on 700 years of European history and deconstruct it. You know, America was not America from the start. It started with people that came from elsewhere and basically killed 90% of the inhabitants of this territory. In whole America, North and South, there were 100 million inhabitants. It was not an empty place. It was, they had a nation, they had government, they knew how to breed, they know how to cultivate. And by the way, the pilgrim, as they call them, it was thanks to that knowledge that they survived. You know, without people on ground, they would have died within a few weeks. So this whole history, it was so important to put it on the playing field so that anybody could understand it, that even the idea of hierarchy is stupid. The history of humanity started in Africa. And then those men started exploring the world everywhere. And they start communicating. They start exchanging what they eat, what they pray to, what art they have. So we come from the same origin. But then it's coupled with religion. When the Catholic Church in the 12th century started to differentiate. And it was always about money and power. When they decided to go back to Jerusalem, the Crusades, it was to get gold and also to have all the Muslims' roots, because the Muslims were the one making all the commercials, deals between Asia, Middle East, Europe.
Yeah,
so once they start killing the Jews and the Muslim, they have enough capital now to explore the rest of the world. They had a lot of money to invest in boats, etc. So the idea was just commercial idea. And they invented the theory of discovery, something that never existed before, that you could just go over the sea, see your territory, put your flag and say, this is mine now. That's an incredible idea. It doesn't make sense. So, you know, I don't want to explain the whole film, but it's about also this country. You were, Isa, talking about South Africa. Something this country doesn't want to realize. This is what we call settler colonialism. This is settler colonialism, meaning you come somewhere, you want to change the inhabitants, and you bring other people to replace them. That's what the South African did. That's what part of Israel did. That's what they did in South Africa, with the German did in Namibia. So there is a terminology for this. So until we recognize that there have been several genocides, the genocide of the Native American and the slavery as genocide, we cannot build this new world. We cannot build this dream. This is James Baldwin. As long as we don't acknowledge those two crimes, there will not be any American dream, because our mere presence will wreck it. This is pure Baldwin.
And your film is called Exterminate All Brutes, just to make sure people know that that's out there. I do want to ask you all where we are right now. First, What headlines for you all have really touched you and maybe changed you in the last few years? There have been so many things. Many people, like myself, talk about this racial reckoning that we seem to be in at the time now. But there are arguments against that as well and pushback. What headlines have struck you, and has that impacted your work at all? And I'll first, Delano, of course, headlines impact you every day because you're sending them out. But you've seen this across media as well. Are we pushing forward, or is there a real pushback when it comes to this idea of racial reckoning right
now? I think that's a difficult question, because I think that that there's been some forward progress in some ways, but we've also taken some steps backward in some ways. But it also, if you're just kind of paying attention to history, it's all very cyclical. Like some of the same issues that we see today, they were present before, but it might have it falls under a different category, or it's under a different umbrella, but there's some of the same issues. And I tell people a lot of times that you can't really move forward unless you've actually properly dealt with some of the ailments of the past. And so if you're not willing to talk about things that happened that were wrong, and we can't have conversations in truth, then you're not really going to be able to move forward. I think, and even working with you on a package about critical race theory, and how terminology can be used, and sometimes it can be weaponized. And we've seen that, especially with lawmakers in DC. And that happens inside the Beltway, and then it winds up, trickling outside the Beltway. And with those decisions that are made and the conversations that are not had in DC, sometimes, and not sometimes, most of the time, it affects the people outside. And I think that some of the headlines that really should be of concern to people right now, aside from critical race theory, is just like looking at some of the restrictions in terms of voting rights. I like to read, and I was reading Master of the Senate by Robert Caro, and a lot of the first couple of chapters, it deals with voting issues. And while we don't actually have people counting soap bubbles or having them recite the Declaration of Independence verbatim, we do have other things that are coming into play. And so I think that if you're paying attention to some of the things that have been happening, there are some headlines that should probably be causing people some concern. And I think that some of the killings that we have seen, that we have documented, that we've covered, that's not necessarily new. When you were in Minneapolis, you did a story, and you basically had joined two families that were basically together in pain. And that was Emmett Till's family and the Floyd family. And so, you haven't really seen, to me, like where we've like broken some of those cycles, and we continue to repeat some of these things over and over again. And I think that where we are right now is, at least with the media, we have been willing to talk about some of this, and we've been afforded the opportunity to cover some of this and to shed some light on things that maybe in the past that would have never happened. But there's still a lot of questions that still need to be asked. And to your point earlier about how it is easy sometimes to cover protests, and sometimes what the fight is when you can't, when it's a positive story, when it's a story that might just be, a contextual piece that would provide somebody with a little bit more insight. That sometimes that's where the battle lies. If you see something and you don't have that hard edge or that news hook, that can really be the difference between getting a story through and not getting it through, and it just kind of like falling flat. And I think until we can get to the point where everyone is actually able to sort of express themselves collectively, and as news organizations across the country, big and small, if they're not really tapping into their communities and listening to the voices of the community, and you still have, a small handful of people who are making the decisions and editorial on editorial, like the things that we cover and how we cover it and who we deploy and what resources we use, you're not really going to have any kind of parity. And that responsibility does fall on news organizations, because they're supposed to be the watchdog. So I think that accountability, that measure of accountability, has to be consistent. And I think we're starting to see some progress. I'm not going to say that we have not made progress, but I think that there's still a long way to go.
Sally, what headlines have struck you, and does it make you want to do different projects, or does it inspire you to do something, or does it just, hit you on a personal level?
A lot of this, as a mother, of, two young Black children. It's had this accumulative effect on me, and unfortunately, it's a fear that has just started to burn in my belly that I didn't used to have. I have never, people think because uh, I'm not the Blackest of women that somehow that shields me from, I'm in Pittsburgh with my kids visiting my brother. My brother is white. This is like from my father's side of his second marriage. And I'm in this neighborhood right now, and I was going to send my children by themselves. And I didn't feel comfortable right now. I'm like, I don't know what you're going to encounter there. I don't know I know who my brother is, but I don't know who the people are around you. And I always knew, I grew up in, Isaiah and I know, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I was always warned, don't go to the police car. I was just always warned, but I have never had such an overwhelming feeling of not feeling comfortable anymore if I don't know what my surroundings are. But as an artist, I try to bring to my work and the things that I'm developing are how do I entertain people and show them us in different places that you don't necessarily see us, that I know we live in, that I know we walk every day. And by entertaining you, I secretly teach you something different. I think that you have to, if I'm just trying to give you a message in my work every day, I don't even want to see that. So my job is to bring you a completely different world so you see it a different way. My job on the set is to, if I'm the only Black woman who you've ever worked for, is to show you what that really means and how stellar we are. So, for me, I'm not on CNN, I'm not a news person, but I come to it from a very personal point of view and worry for my children.
That is stunning. I hate to put it this way, but it's a damn shame that you feel this way about, and I think a lot of people feel this way right now about, the safety of everyday life. And I don't know how that has changed, I think, for a lot of people. But just because you're not in news, I know a lot of people, we all do, they get a lot of their information from entertainment, right?
Yes.
That's just the reality. The movies they see sometimes hit them in a very, very different way, and it's more memorable. So it's important work. Isaiah, I'm going to try to lift things just a bit. What sort of inspires you when you're in the media and you're watching media? What inspires you? What helps you, go to work every day and do your thing? What advice could you give to young people getting into this business, whether it is in sports or news or entertainment, to keep you going?
What continues to inspire me is the work that my mom did, that my dad was doing, that all of our great greats were doing in this country to try to uplift us back to humanity and trying to regain our nationality. And again, not being these colorized, secular, colonial, apartheid boxes that we find ourselves here in America. And so that fight, that struggle, that's the family business that we're activists in, trying to regain our birthrights in this country, trying to be equal. Those are the things that inspire me every single day. Those are the things that I read about. Those are the things that we talk about. Most of the time people think we're talking about, sports and the NBA. But no, we're really talking about, nationality, birthrights, equal rights. Why are we fighting for civil rights and voting rights? But the white male in this patriarchal system he has birthrights. He's never had to fight for civil rights, equal rights, voting rights. And you asked the question, earlier Have we seen the headline that inspires us? Sadly, I haven't seen that headline because we are still talking about this faith and belief in race that keeps us separated, segregated, and allows the system to work. We haven't really come to a full understanding and definition of what race really is. But yet here in America, we fall into these black, white statuses, I call them. It's like Santa Claus. Do you believe in Santa Claus? Do you believe in race? While we're governed under race, we're governed under these colorized boxes. When I travel outside of America, that's the only time that I'm seen as an American. When I come back inside of America, then someone says you're black, someone says you're white, someone says you're green, mulatto, so forth and so on. I'm old enough, and Sally's old enough, and all of us are old enough where we've been classified in this country as Negro, colored, Afro-American, black, African-American, and black again. And all these classifications, they really do mean something in law and nationality in the international courts. So, again, I just think the critique and the understanding of this, as Raul pointed out, this secular colonial apartheid system that we are governed under, that's the conversation that needs to take place. But as long as they got us talking about race, that's like, us talking about Santa Claus. Does it exist? Does it not exist? We're all living on a hyphen. And what I mean by the hyphen, Sally's family's mixed, my family's mixed, your family's mixed. There's not a person that's on this earth, walking this universe, that doesn't have some type of mixture in terms of cross-pollination. And these are the conversations that we need to start having here in America about the system that we're being governed and ruled under, not necessarily, black, white, green, blue, red, or yellow.
I find it extremely enlightening when you talk about you're an American outside of the country. That's how you're seen, as an American. And as soon as you arrive back, then you're a whole bunch of different things, but generally you're a black guy, right? Or you're, suddenly your color comes into it. And I had that exact same experience in India, where I felt like an ambassador for America, because people said, oh, the American's coming. And as soon as I got back into the States, it was like, whoa, very different reception. Raul.
And again, that is the system. And I think until we start truly critiquing the system, in the newsroom and everything else, and the concepts and the terminology that we're using of description, as much as we're talking about race and racialized, give me the definition of it. And do we all agree on what we're talking about? Because right now it's all over the place.
It is. And when we were talking about critical race theory, social scientists say that race is socially constructed. That if you do our DNA tests, we're all 99.999 to infinity the same. And that we're the human race, and then you've got, other things. So it is the definition. Yeah.
So can we get real? If we're talking about science, can we get real and have the real discussion and not have the conversation around faith and belief?
That's very pointed and great. Raul, you, speaking of, the way that things are received internationally versus the way things are received in the United States, have you felt or heard or seen a difference in the way that your films, which the last couple have really delved into this divide that has been created, have you received different reactions, whether it be internationally or nationally?
Well, what I would like to say about that, because it's a very complex discussion, and especially because we have so little occasion to have that kind of discussion. You know, I'm old enough as well to have seen moments in our modern history, let's say the last 60 years or the last 50 years, how we have sometimes have a big moment of victory, of joy. It's going to change, and now everything got it, and everybody's going to make an effort. 5 years later, 10 years later, nothing happened. It becomes worse. Not that we don't have victories. We have, but the machine is extremely resilient. And if we don't have the ability to have power, we have nothing. Others will always make the decisions for us. In my field, as long as I don't have an executive in front of me that know my story, that understand my story, without me having to use 80% of my meeting time to explain to him where I come from, who I am, what is my story. And I have little time to explain, in fact, well, I have to tell you who James Baldwin is as well. So basically, I spent my time educating people who are lazy because they sit on their power position and they, entertain me or explain to me in a nutshell. So I stopped doing that. And I just work where I have total freedom. I do my job. Those last two films, it took me, the James Baldwin film, it took me 10 years because I wanted to make it on my own terms. I didn't want to have any, discussion with an editor explaining me my story, explaining me my feelings. So it's a hard position to have, but I don't see any other way. And our fight is for more power position. The discussion, Oscar, not so white, that's way at the end of the food chain. It's where the decisions are made. Who do we have in the room? Like Sally, you were saying you are very often the only person. And Isaiah, I think the same, Delano is the same. That's the problem. And what is happening right now, we have indeed, there is more money, we have more jobs, there is more story. And by the way, it's like there is a party at the plantation, so the master is not really looking at every corner of the plantation. And so that's where we can do. My last film, that was that. I stole it, basically. There have been basically more than $100 billion on the entertainment market those last 5 years, every year, with all the platform. Can you imagine economically what it means? There is food for everybody, So the moment we have now, of course, we are all working. But what does it mean in terms of structure? What are we establishing that in 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, we are not going to go back, especially with all those aggression, ideological aggression, critical race theory, all the, you have to watch out every term you use because the troll, the extreme right have just taken them. We are losing that rhetorical battle. It maybe in 1 year, we won't be able to speak because all the terms will be totally damaged, So it's really a very tough time, and we shouldn't think that we have won a battle right now. We are in the middle of it, and we should see what is really the goal. The goal is about power and economical power and the possibility to decide for ourselves. And just one thing about the hope, my hope is people like India Walton, like Stacey Abraham, because they got it. They know they have to start the job from the roots and then build alliances, build power from the roots. And I hope a lot of people would understand that. You need boots on the ground. It's not internet, it's not, whatever some of the people are doing. It's really about the work, the daily work with the people.
This is kind of a question for everyone. Because I think for young people who are going into film journalism, commentating, filmmaking, directing, whatever venue they're trying to get into in the media, do you ever get exhausted by the role in which you find yourself merely because of the color of your skin? And if you do, how do you get through that? How do you push through that? Because there's a personal sort of battle that you're always seeming to have that maybe others don't have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we have talked about too, right? I think you have to have a very good support system, and you have to have a good team around you, because it can be an exhausting fight. None of this is really different, right? Like Rahul had pointed out a little bit ago, and Isaiah did as well. Like when you're talking about a system, when there is a system that's in place, there's always going to be sort of your minority majority population or community, or in your newsroom or in your office. And I would say that racism, or whenever there's like a push for diversity, we hear a lot of that terminology, but how sincere are those efforts to truly diversify your newsroom or your business? Are you truly committed to it, or is it just, merely some talk? And I think that some companies they obviously have rolled that out, and maybe their intentions are good, but then some haven't. And at the end of the day, you really have to kind of like show what you've done, and see if you don't have like the numbers that you would like, then are you giving people an opportunity to utilize their platforms? But the exhaustion kicks in because you're often the only person that's in that room. And having never been in any of the other places and atmospheres that we've talked about, I can relate because I understand being in that predicament. There are a couple of things beyond having the support system. Sally had also mentioned, like her children, and that's one of the things that I think about. This is not new for me and my generation. My grandfather was somebody who fought in the civil rights movement. And to me, this is also just, I said before, this is a calling. And I sincerely mean that. This is something that I'm almost taking the baton from my ancestors, and I'm trying to continue the work that they did, because while we've made some progress, it's obviously not nearly where things, ideally would be. And it's the same conversation that I think toward the end of their lives, like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King had, where you kind of shift in that discussion about race, and you're starting to talk about human rights. And I think that toward the end of, like if you read Martin Luther King's book about Community or Chaos, we're in a similar predicament where I think we're having some of these same conversations today. And I think that there's always hope. There's always hope that we can do better, and there's always that commitment and that push to do better. And I think that it shouldn't be a fight, but it is a fight, and so you've got to support yourself and have people around you who can help you endure that fight. And that you're doing it. For me, this is the work that is necessary, and that work is bigger than I am. It's not about any kind of accolades or anything like that. It is sincerely about trying to tell the truth, and where we can, to make sure that we're providing that balance where there's imbalance. And if I'm in a newsroom, it doesn't matter what newsroom I'm in, I'm not going to shut up. Like I'm probably going to speak up. Like that's the nature of who I am. And that is also who I became. And when I mentioned becoming, like being a cops reporter, early in my career, and I told you this story before, Sarah, my first story that I covered, I was a features reporter. So I actually got to cut my teeth as a cops reporter. And one of the first cases that I covered was a police officer who had ran over a black man. He was pursuing him. And rather than getting out of the car, he ran him over through a wooden fence, and he crushed him. And I sat there most of the day while some of my journalistic peers left. And I wanted to make sure that I talked to his mother and his family, and I talked to as many witnesses as I could possibly talk to. And that was in East St. Louis. And a lot of people didn't necessarily want to go there because it was a crime-ridden area, based on the narratives that you were hearing. And I knew a little bit about the history there because I knew about the race riots in the early 1900s. And if you fast forward to my job when I was at the Associated Press, we did a really big package on the Red Summer. And that connection is there. Like, I knew that, but then later on in life, I'm making that connection. And so a lot of the stories that I've tried to do, whether it's at CNN or elsewhere, it's been to try to show people what had happened in the past and how we can maybe move it forward so that we're not repeating some of the same some of the same transgressions from the past, and maybe educate that right person. And it might just be me with Pollyannish glasses on sometimes, but I think that journalism still matters and it can make an impact. And for me, that is what keeps me going. It's that, and I have 2 boys, and I want them to live in a better world. I have a teenage daughter, and I want the world to be better for her. And at the end of the day, that's what I mean when I say that I'm doing the work, because the work is important.
For me, all I can do is, and I think this would be the message for all young people, is do what you can wherever you are, even if it's just that little tiny step, being on the set every day. Yeah, I'm exhausted sometimes because it's this gymnastics that I'm doing, all this bobbing and weaving to figure out, sometimes it could just be me. It could be my little sensitivity. Are you responding to me that way because I'm a woman? Are you responding to me because of color? I don't really know where, what this is coming from. I do know I'm the boss, and and you're going to have to respond to me accordingly. But it's really, for me, at the end of the day, is maneuvering through this world and getting done what I need to have done. Like I said before, they have me there sort of in the top position sometimes, but how do I get that trickle down? I look at a crew all day. It could be, it's 99% white. And I have people around me I'm working with who I respect, and I like these people. And sometimes it's just bringing their attention to, hey guys, I know you have me in, I know you have another Black woman who's associate producer, but when I come back here, I think that we have to go down the crew and we have to start implementing new positions, because then those are the people who will train the next generation of people. And no, that doesn't mean the lowest PA that you have. That means someone in the sound department. That means, has to be, hair, makeup, camera. I want to see people everywhere. And that's the little bit that I can do, that I have power to do, is to use my voice to make sure that I am putting a little bit. And guess what? That's just not our title as Black people, Isaiah. That's making sure there should be some Hispanic people on this crew. There should be more women on this crew, and just calling it out. And I've been very lucky where I am, that I feel that I'm being heard and acknowledged, and I'm sending them Ava DuVernay's Array website with the right amount of crew people. I'm like, and here are the tools so that you can't tell me that you don't know where to find them, because we're here. And I know it because I've worked with the people. So for me, it's just about doing whatever little bit that I can and teaching my children to do the same.
Again, I'm old enough to remember, and Sally, again, we both grew up in Chicago, and
hey, stop saying I'm old enough to remember. I don't know what you're talking about. No, but go ahead.
Isaiah, you can say you're wise enough. You're wise enough.
You've been of this younger generation. But I do remember, distinctly in our neighborhood, the Irish were proud to be called Irish. The Italians were proud to be called Italians. Greeks were proud to be called, Greek. And, Polish were, so there was a mixture. And now I ask this question: understanding the American system that we're living under, those who have moved from Irish, Polish, Greek, Italian to now classified as white, and they don't say they're Italian anymore, they don't say they're Irish anymore, they say they're white. If you classify as white in this system, are you truly trying to help those who are classified as Black? And those of us who are classified as Black, can we ever rise back up to our nationality of American?
that question has been, and you were mentioning something, I think everyone should take a look at the book Cast, The Origins of Our Discontents, because it really delves into that whole notion that Irish and Italian and Greek, people from all over the place, that it was all sort of to be categorized as white, and the different rungs that people are ascribed to, and where that is in society. There's a pecking order, right? As we look at going forward, and as we look at the landscape of media, do we concentrate too much on the trauma, the sort of the trauma of Black folks, and not enough of the joy? Or is this, something that we've gotten right finally?
When I first heard about the topic or the title of this meeting here, Black trauma, my first reaction was, who is putting that on the table again? And why? There are so many important problems, like all the ones we just discussed. Every one of them should, have a 100 panel to debate. So the Black trauma issue, as I said at the beginning, it's why is it that I felt all my life I've been in trauma? Sarah, I told you yesterday about I was traumatized by driving Miss Daisy. I was traumatized.
Tell folks why. Tell folks why. Why that?
Because it's humiliating the whole time. I am watching this older character who could be my father or my grandfather humiliating himself. And I know that same grandfather, when he's at home, he's a respected old man and nobody move in the house when he's there. And I see him as a servant, smiling, understanding this older white lady, being a human being with her. And it's the whole thing's upside down. And we have been fed of that all my life, from the first Hollywood film I saw, where I had to deconstruct, where am I in there? How come I'm the one naked and this other guy can do whatever he wants? How come I don't sympathize with those Black people on the screen? All that is trauma for a young boy or a young girl of 8, 9, 10. And that's the story of our life. So I am sometimes a bit impatient with people that, especially in the white conservatives camp, like each word now, they are upset. They are angry. I say, we have been angry for so long, I can't remember. And now suddenly you have to be in the center of the room to express your anger. Critical race theory suddenly is an issue. You're right to be angry and give us lesson again about patriotism and democracy. We can't even digest what happened on the June 6th in the Capitol. We're just trying to sweep it under the carpet. So it's really incredible what's going on right now. That's why I cannot be happy or serene about the situation. I'm afraid because, again, they are making us losing time. We are losing a lot of time discussing stuff that are not essential, and we should make alliance. We should have more, like this meeting. I think it's a great occasion to voice those things and to see that, well, Sally think like me on certain, Isaiah the same. So we have a common experience we could put together. And that's what it is about. We have to stop watching what the white plantation owner in all his redemption lust, is inventing, and concentrate on us. What is the world we want to build? What is where we want to put our energy in, And it's tough because we are well educated, well polished. So we tend to be very open. When somebody comes to us with something, say, yeah, let's have a discussion. But again, I've seen too many times we are following somebody else's agenda, and we are sometimes fighting each other. And when you ask, why are we fighting, by the way? No, it's somebody just throw a bone for us, and we are fighting for that bone. And it's I don't believe, the two last film I made, to be frank with you, I made them in a sense like, I don't see any immediate future in those battles, but let me save those things for the future generation. Because as a filmmaker, that's what I think I can do. You, as writers, you can do that. Let's save what the next generation will need as instrument to understand their world. The trauma of Donald Trump is incredible. We still don't see the end of it. This all those people coming on Fox or anywhere, saying things that would be unacceptable just 10 years from now, but they are saying it. They're not afraid to say it. So I cannot ignore those signs. And we should not underestimate what is going on right now. And I wish I could be more optimistic, but it's really what I felt. I am in a stage of fighting. I'm not, and I can't renounce. We have to do that battle. And as artists, journalists, we are privileged, by the way. So we can't even afford, Sally, as you said, you're tired. We're all tired, but we can't even say it because we know what's going on where we came from, and so it's really, it's hard, and it's a battle that we have to do every day. Am I doing the right discussion? I'm doing the right fight. Where do I put the rest of the energy I have to build something?
I find it really telling that both you, Raul, and Sally, both directors as well, use the word fear. That there is a sense of fear right now that is different, that is more intense. So I guess the answer is, what is your superpower to get through that and create something that you are proud of and you think that will make a difference? And this is to everyone. What is that thing, that superpower that you possess, that helps you push out your creativity and push out the product that you would like the world to acknowledge and see?
Well, I can say for me right now, coming into my own as a director, as fearful and, like I said, this whirlwind of things going on in my gut, when I approach my work, I approach it with absolutely no fear. And it's the only way I can be a creative and to get my voice out there. If I show fear, it's not going to be good. You can't be brilliant with fear. So I just have to push down those feelings and keep pushing ahead. I have to put down those feelings of, being in the entertainment business and especially being an actress first. For many years, I'd be on a show thinking, if I don't keep myself a little small and quiet, they'll just fire me and replace me with some other Black actress. And then have the voice that my counterparts would have on the show to be, who wants to be difficult or to be difficult or to question things, because I always felt replaceable. At this point in my life and at this age in my life, I have decided that I am not replaceable and that I will take my power. I will give you my opinion. If I don't like your opinion and you're wrong, I'm going to tell you. Part of my superpower too is I do get along with people. I try to find a way to get you on my side, for us to, and to hear your perspective so you can hear mine. And I think that sometimes it takes us being in those spaces. Instead of going, I'm not going to talk to these people because I know they think different than me, I'm going to try to be around enough so that we can have a discussion and maybe it can change your mind. A lot of crew guys, they're going to have different perspectives. You got your Teamsters, they're hanging around. We come from different worlds, but I have found that I find a way that those men have been very respectful of me. And we find a way to talk about our differences. I may not change your mind, but I think God has put me in this place to maybe give you some sort of different perspective. That's all I can do, and to push past my fear.
Can I just tell you, Sally, how powerful it would have been for me to hear I am not replaceable when I started out in this business. And I think for a lot of us, we are told by our bosses and our counterparts that there's 1,000 of you out there that want to be doing this. So if you don't do it, somebody else will, and move on, right? I mean, it's I can't tell you how many times I have heard that either from a boss or a supervisor or a colleague even, that we are all replaceable. And I'm not talking about Black people. I'm talking about just in general in the business of media. And I think that was an incredibly powerful statement for the younger generation, but also for someone that's been in the business for 25 years. You know what I mean? I think that is a really powerful statement. Something
we have to embrace, that we're good now.
Yeah.
We're good now. We know what we're doing. And just really, I'm good. And nobody can come in and be me.
Isaiah, you want to jump in here and talk about your superpower? I mean, we've seen some of your superpower, but you have another role that you are doing now too, or several roles. Tell folks what is that thing that you think is the unique thing that keeps you going, but that also kind of pushes the information that you'd like out in the world out there.
I would say, the superpower, started, playing basketball, as you and Sally just talked about, not being replaceable, and understanding that at that time as a player, the things that I was doing out on the floor and the way I was winning let me know that I wasn't replaceable, that I was unique. And then a voice elevated from there that was really from my past. And the superpower, for me is that collective we that I always lean back on, that I always hear, that inspires me to keep pushing and to move forward. And knowing that I'm not alone, knowing that there are other voices, knowing that there are other people. And growing up in Chicago on the West Side, and there are a lot of films and people, talk about, Chicago now, on the block of 20, you had 18 parents and 18 kids going to school, trying to do the right thing. And you may have 2 households on that block that about doing everything wrong. Well, the media would come in and only want to talk about those 2 houses, but they never want to talk about the 18 other graduates that were graduating from high school, going to college, and how they was making it. So my voice, and I talk to that silent majority of those 18 families that the media don't want to talk to or talk about, but only want to make films and talk about those 2 households that are terrorizing the whole neighborhood. And in every Chicago, every Detroit, every Indiana that I've been in, those silent families, those silent majorities, that mom, that dad, that uncle, that's getting up every day, making sure that Junior can get to school, or that, somebody can get their homework done, or get a hot dog from Vienna's. I mean, those are the people that I speak to. And those are the people that inspire me every day that I wake up, because I know that they are listening and they are the voiceless in that community. So I try to speak for that majority who are the voiceless, and not necessarily speak to that minority that the white male media has always pushed out to say, this is your neighborhood.
Mm. That's also extremely powerful. And I've been there in those neighborhoods because a boss said, go tell this story. I think what you're talking about really in the end is balance. Reality isn't just one thing, but often the dramatic usually the traumatic is what makes it on the screen. And with that, I will go to Delano and talk about your superpower. And if you'd like to comment on anything that Isaiah just said, because it is the world that we live in and that we sometimes push against that comes to us, and we have to grapple with it.
Yeah, there was a lot there. Like as he was speaking, I thought about so much. But I guess I would say that my superpower it's a couple of things. I really just try to bring my authentic self to work. And one of the things that I had to overcome, similar to what Sally was saying, I guess, or at least my takeaway from it, I probably wrestled with imposter syndrome at a point in my career. And being in different places, I didn't always feel like I was as talented as maybe I or some of my peers might have thought. But there was a sort of a turning point, and I realized that, why are these people getting so mad when I leave? Like, if I suck, why do you care? And it's like that you never actually get any of that recognition, while you are there and the impact that you make. And I look back at it, and for me, especially where I am now, look, I am not from a major city. I am from a very small suburban town. I'm from Medina, Ohio. It is 95% white, and my entire life I was the one black kid, and I had to endure racism, and that was just one of the things that I had to also accept too. And when I did go to school, then I got the opposite of that because people would say, "Well, you talk white." But what I did learn to do was to navigate that world and to navigate both worlds. And that is what has afforded me the opportunity to be able to break things down sometimes to my white bosses or my white peers. And so the thing that people once held against me is actually the thing that I can actually use to help get a message across. My career has kind of evolved to the point now where I'm not front facing. I'm somebody who is in the background, but I'm a very vocal person. And so I would say that I'm kind of like the left tackle. And my main role, even as the leader of the race team, is to block and tackle so that other people can be great. If you're not going to speak up and you come to me, I absolutely will speak up because I don't care because that's just been something that I've had to kind of like adopt over time because I am confident in who I am and the impact that I make. And it's also sort of spreading that word too and making sure that I have a bunch of mentees who look up to me too. And that's something that happened over the course of my career because I try to make sure that I'm giving back to other people because if I go and nobody is coming up behind me, then the industry is just going to be whatever it is that the majority wants it to be, and if there's no diversity in newsrooms and I don't combat that and I'm not trying to help recruit and retain people, if I'm not doing any of those things, then, it's going to be a worse situation for the community. And that's the way that I look at it. So that is also one of the things that it really does stick with me. It's not just me. I have people who are watching me and people know you're always on the stage. I certainly know that. And so I know that for a lot of my mentees and some of my peers as well, they'll come in, they'll ask me for advice. And I had to accept who I was. I'm somebody that has been a manager since he was 26 years old. And so I go into different spaces and I have to actually accept who I am. And if anything, I would say that especially in 2021, during the reckoning, as it continues. But last year, I did step up and say, okay, well, I guess I am going to be that guy then, right? And if you give me the ball, then I'm going to take it. Let's go. But at the end of the day, it really is just about putting people in a position to empower themselves, believe in themselves, elevate themselves in their work, and make sure that we continue to keep this thing going.
Great, thank you. I think you're talking about imposter syndrome, and I certainly have experienced that as well. And I think a lot of people, particularly in this business, experience it and then move on to bigger and better things, which you have done. Raul, superpower, something that fuels you?
Well, the superpower is a very American concept, but I will try to answer that. The one thing I do is it's like some sort of yoga. It's really to question myself every day, because every day is new, and you have to know the field, the battle, of the field of battle to know how to deal with it every day. But the notion of fear is it's linked to different things. History helped me to push down my fear. When you remember one of the last big collective events, the civil rights movement, you had black, white, Jewish kids, religious kids, academic, going to the South, risking their lives, doing seminars to know what do you do if you are arrested? What do you do if they will try to kill you? Those were real moments of fear. And those young people went south and risked their life. And a great number of them died, tortured. So when you hear about that today in the fight we are having, sometimes I tell to myself, I can't have fear. Fear is to get in the bus, drive, and people are throwing rocks at the bus, burning the bus, the bus down. That's reality. And today, and I'm not talking about us here especially, but everybody in this modern world, we are afraid to lose our job. We are afraid because losing our job is we can't pay all the material we bought. We can't feed our children. We can't have insurance, etc., etc. And the incredible thing is that I can make a difference. I saw in Europe, how much more leeway you have because when you lose your job, you have at least a month or two to look for and to wait, and your social security is running. If you're sick, you go to any hospital, you get the best doctor. And in America, it's different because the machine is behind you every day. You don't have the time to breathe. So, and that's why I don't give people a lesson, because I know it's tough, that's how life or the economy, the daily life is organized. But it's good to remind yourself every day that there have been worse time and people have sacrificed their life for you to be able to do that today, to be able to exist, to be able to talk. And that humility helped me deal with my fears and also try not to allow material to determine your decisions. Fear of losing something material, that's hard if you have responsibility as a parent. But this is also something that's a little music I have in my head all the time.
I'm going to kind of end with something. First of all, if there is anything else that you all, any one of you would like to say that we haven't gotten to, but I would like to hear one word or phrase or something that in your life has that you go back to regularly when times are tough to get through those times. I know that's a hard ask, but whether it's something Grandma said, whether it's something James Baldwin said, or Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or anyone, a teacher, is there something that you go back to that comes to you, whether it be religious or not, that you use to bring yourself back up, to lift yourself back up when times are tough at work and in life in general? I'll start with you, Sally.
What's funny is it's something my husband tells me a lot, is that we have been, all of us, especially on this panel, we have been put in this position not to have our big house and our car, but to do the greater good. God has given us this gift to do something special with it. And really, what is our mission? It can't just be to entertain. And we all need to find what our real true mission is in this life and how we can help. And usually that's when we're in this state, when something feels uncomfortable and we're worried about going to that next step. So, I like to talk to young people who are trying to come up and do what we're doing and embrace uncomfortable, embrace the fear of what's going to be next and take the challenge. to do something that you're not sure that you're going to do. Delano, when you were talking about, I'm waiting every day. I go, when are they going to find out? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why these people are listening to me, but it's working out. And then all of a sudden I realized, you know what? Like I said, I do know what I'm doing. And I have to stop doubting myself. So embrace the challenge and embrace the fear and take that next step and figure out what your purpose is and what you're really here for. And don't just worry about paying your bills, and do something bigger.
I'm going to go to you, Delano. Something that you use to lift you up.
Sally really nailed it, because that's what I would say. I would tell people that I do try to live and walk in my purpose. But what I would also add to that is, one of the things that my mother taught me was to have grace, and also to just be gentle with yourself, because sometimes, especially like at this level, right, you're constantly trying to be like perfectionist and you want to nail everything and hit a home run. But you also have to be willing to stop and celebrate your victories, and know that even if somebody else doesn't count it as a win, sometimes that incremental progress forward is actually a pretty huge win in a lot of ways. And, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, and at work, I could have a correction, right? But that correction does not define my entire career. It doesn't define who I am. And that's something also that I had to learn. And that's also like stepping out of that imposter syndrome. So, being gentle with yourself and actually being able to celebrate your wins when you have them. I mean, that's one of the critical things that I would tell anybody, especially a young person, aspiring journalist. And I don't consider myself to be, I didn't go to a major journalism school or a program. I went to the University of Akron. And so you can make a way. And I absolutely believe that if you're walking in your purpose, then the opportunities are going to come to you. But what do you do with your platform if given that opportunity? If you're going to utilize that platform, then you should utilize it to its fullest potential. And that's the thing that, I would leave with anybody, especially a young journalist today.
All right, Isaiah, give us some wisdom.
For me, I would say, words that I heard from my mom and my dad about, understanding the system that we're being governed under, and understanding the laws that go along with the system that we're being governed under. And in this system, and I'm sure we've all heard it before from our parents and our grandparents, you gotta be twice as good, you gotta be twice as fast, you gotta be twice as strong just to be even. And I try to come every day with that thought and with that work ethic, knowing that that's a challenge that I'm faced with every day within this system. And, and forget whether it's fair or not fair. These are the times that we're in. Those were the times that we were in. And this is what we're dealing with. So you gotta strap it up, and you gotta get to work. And the last thing I would say is, in this system, people of color, you're going to fail. There's going to be some heartaches. You're going to get knocked down. That comes with the game. That comes with the system that we're in. No one gets through this unscathed without getting knocked down. Now, do you have the intestinal fortitude to get up? Is there collective strength around you that helps you get up? Those are the things that we have to rely on and depend on, because you're going to get knocked down. You're going to fail. That's the way the system is set up. So understanding that you're going to fail, understanding that you're going to get knocked down, but then you can get up and rise. That perseverance, that resistance, that understanding gives you a totally different feel and look in terms of the game that you're playing, the system that you're being governed under, and the laws that you're playing by.
I would, I always go back to Baldwin. When I am in need, I go back to James Baldwin. And one particular phrase, I'm going to try to quote it, but to paraphrase it, is like, every human being is an incredible miracle. And I learned to love each one of these miracles, but also to protect myself from the monsters they have become. And in fact, for me, it's like a philosophy of life between, love and at the same time learning by your experience, and also to see the fault. Sometimes it's you and the other, but it's about, how do you deal with that as a human being?
I don't even have words. Yeah. Incredible. Thank you so much, Raul. And I have one that my mother used to read Rumi to me, a very ancient poet. And one of the things that Rumi says is, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. And sometimes I have to remind myself that everything you need has already been given to you. You just have to find it. But I will say that I have a new one now to remember, and that Sally just gave to me, which is, and young people should keep this in their heart, you are not replaceable. I'm going to make that a mantra for the week. You are not replaceable. It is the most powerful thing I have heard in a while, because I always think of myself as replaceable. I really do. And it really struck me. I don't know about y'all, but I have, we've heard that our whole lives. So it has been an absolute pleasure to be able to speak with you. This is my first time meeting most of you. And I just, I feel so blessed, so honored to be able to sit and have such an intimate conversation with people who have some of the most amazing careers and have changed careers and just exploded with goodness onto the scene. So thank you so much, Sally, Isaiah, Delano, and Raul, for this extraordinary talk.
Thank you
so much, Sarah. You've been amazing. You've been amazing.